Welcome to another VR Basic Bytes, where I help you make VR experiences that are beginner friendly. And today we're going to be jumping into a little bit of code. Don't be afraid. I initially was always scared of code, and my students are typically. So we're kind of going to do a nice little on-ramp into the code, do a few basic things before we start throwing scripts together. So let's get started. As always, the cheat sheet is on vrbasicbytes.com, and it looks something like this, the show notes. And we are episode 3. And let me show you where we left off real quick using my practice one, which is what I build during the week. And then today I'll be building the live version. The links to these projects are in the GitHub links that are on the show notes. So let me show you where we left off real quick. All right, so we can teleport around the ship. We can go here. I'm going to try not to hit the microphone. Maybe. Boom. Oh, yeah. So this is actually where we're going. Sorry, not where we left off. Sorry, I completely misphrased that. As things hit the score catcher down there, which we're going to make invisible, but for now you can see that when the cans hit it, you get 5 points. It shoots confetti out of the cannon over there. And if you run out of tomatoes, you can just click on this button a bunch of times, which could probably be adjusted a little bit, but it's still kind of fun. But now you have an unlimited amount of tomatoes. So if you're really bad aim, that's okay. Unlike at the actual carnival, where you have to keep paying money to buy stuffed animals, win stuffed animals that are worth 30 cents. Okay. So let's go into the live version. This is where we left off. Sorry about that. If I look at my cheat sheet, give you a quick overview of what we're doing. We're going to build a user interface so that the user can see the score. Of course, and I have all the positions in here. You don't have to use these. These are just to speed up this live broadcast. We're going to be making 3 separate scripts, and I do have screenshots of them. I didn't put in the actual text because my students just copy and paste things sometimes, like when we were students. But we're going to be following these. I got a little cheat sheet here myself on paper. It's the exact same scripts that I'll be looking at, but I'll be explaining them as we go. So don't be intimidated by this. It'll make sense here shortly. Making the can catcher, which is that thing you saw that gives us points. And then finally the confetti, which is just a particle system, like an air trail behind an airplane, something following your superhero around flying. This is just going to be little particles that shoot out. And we'll give it a time to shoot out, which is when the cans hit the can catcher. So let's make our first UI element, which is going to be a text box, basically. What's interesting about these text boxes is if I go to game object UI, you'll see 2 texts. This is the old one. You get kind of blurry text. It's not super crisp. And then they introduced Text Mesh Pro, which is a fancy way of saying this is going to be really crisp text. And you'll notice I don't have a canvas over here. And the canvas is just simply where all the UI elements live. Okay, it's like a container. So if I do a Text Mesh Pro, it creates the text, but it also creates a canvas for us. So I'm going to make this called score text. And if I hover over this, remember when you click on something and hover the scene view and hit F? Yowza. We're like out in space. The thing is huge. That's the ocean right there that the ship's on. And this is huge. And a couple of reasons for that. One is the whole canvas is in screen space, which basically, if you leave it on screen space, sometimes you want UI like that. As the user looks around, it's like having a sticker on the front of your reading glasses. I don't use reading glasses, but imagine you did, and everywhere you looked, that sticker would be in the same spot, always right in front of you. Could be useful. In this case, I'm going to set it to world space, which means think of like going to a soccer game or something and you look over to the scoreboard and the scoreboard is just there in the world. You just have to look to that spot each time you want to see the score. So we're going to make it world space. It wants to know my camera, so I'm going to give it my main camera here. It's yelling at me. There we go. Now it's still far too large, so I'm just going to go to my plank and hit F to focus. Navigate here so we can see what's going on. And then I'm going to kind of cheat and get this set up so I have the correct UI location. So the canvas position is going to be negative. You know what? Yeah, I can do this. Negative 2.324 for the score. Negative 2.234. Negative 2.234. 2.24. 2.24. Negative 533. Negative 0.533. Obviously we're gonna have to rotate it 90 because it was actually negative 90. Because it was way in the wrong space. So we're getting closer. It's kind of in the ballpark now. We're also going to. I'm sorry, that was the canvas position. Boy, I just messed that up, didn't I? Actually, watch this. Copy component, go to canvas, paste component values. Hey, there we go. Much better. So the text is here now. So the text itself, negative 3.41. Negative 3.41. 03391. 3.91. There we go. We're basically in the ballpark. From this point, our text is way too large, so I'm gonna. But yeah, it's huge. The text is huge. Let's go with like a. We can scrub this value way down. I think I used like a 5 before. Where'd my text go? I can't even see it anymore. There it is. It's here. It's not right though. I think I did a negative. Yeah, I did 2 negative 90s. You don't want to do that twice. That would be a 0. And then the scale for the text is all 0.1s because it's huge. There we go. Now we're in the ballpark, right? So from here, you can basically just adjust it as you see fit. I'm going to bring this in here, kind of tighten this up a little bit. Good. So when I'm standing here throwing tomatoes, let's scrub that X value of the text over a little bit and go down a little bit, something like that. Now I like to have a little background on these to make the text really stand out. So you can go to game object or you can right click right on the canvas, go to UI image, and it's not actually going to be a real image. That is a one giant image. But this is going to be our background. And then let's do, just need the scale really. I'll position the rest. 03009. 3009 and 0.1. Now this is the boring part, just getting all this stuff situated. And I'm guessing this image is, I put that in the wrong place. Nicely done. Oops. Boy, the control V's are not working. It's me, not the control V. 0.1 here. There. We got a little background here. Now, kind of scale this a little. Let's go like 0.2. I want it to be black, but partially transparent so I can see through it. And now the background is not where we want it to be. I want it to be kind of snug right behind it. And it looks like you're looking through a tinted window right now, even though it's behind it, which is very counterintuitive. Let's make it like 0.03. There we go. And that looks good. Now, it's basically behind it, but it looks like it's in front of it from this side. And I figured out that you just have to drag the score text below the background, and that puts it closer to, well, where I'm standing anyways. So, nothing like flying inverted. There we go. So we've got our text. This is our score text. This is where the player is going to see their score. Looks great. Save that. Got that part done. And now we have our UI kind of situated so we can put our button in there too. I'm going to come back to the script itself. I'm just going to get all my UI elements in there. Um, so now let's get a button that we can spawn tomatoes. Um, so again, I'm going to go to the canvas, right click, UI, button, text mesh pro, because I want very crisp text, right? And that button is, a little large. So would I scale that? 0.05s all the way across. 0.005 tab, 0.005 tab, 0.005 tab. Oh, there you are. And we just position it wherever. You can look at the numbers, but I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Now, if I look in the game view, you can see it's kind of sitting right there, right where the player can reach it and see it and actually hit the button and click on it. So the button itself, I'm going to make it this kind of bright red somewhere in there. And then, of course, it can't read dark text on a dark background. We need some contrast. So the text has a vertex color, which is the text color, which we're going to make white. And we want it to not say button. We want it to say spawn tomato. And we'll just scrub the size down a little bit to make it fit in there. There we go. And since we're in world space, that'll exist there. You can see it's just sitting in the scene and not stuck to my camera. I can move around and see it or not see it. And actually the background and button, I'm going to move this in just a little bit, up a little so I can see it from just about any height. Okay. Now we've got the basic things in here. And we'll make the can catcher script later, but let's jump into a little bit of code. And I kind of want to explain before I actually make the scorekeeper can that will actually change the score and change the text in here to show you the score. That's two different steps: the actual value of the score and then what the text says the score is. So in our Carnival cans, I'm going to create a new folder. Maybe call it scripts. Nice to stay a little organized. And we're going to create C# script. And we're going to call this scorekeeper cans. Now, when we write code in here, the code will not run unless the script is attached to an object in the scene. So I'm just going to drag it and drop it right onto my score text. So if I go to my score text, each one of these is called a component. Its location, is the transform, the renderer that shows it, the text, and now this script I just added. So we're going to launch this and get a first scary look at a C# script. Don't panic. Okay, panic. So first of all, this stuff at the top, you don't typically have to add anything, even though we will be today. They're called namespaces, but the way I like to think of them is like each one is like a book in a library that gives Unity access to all the code, the preset actions that Unity can do. But if you walk into a library, you don't need to load every single book if your program doesn't need it. So we only add on to here when we need an extra book, a namespace, in which case we do need to. Text Mesh Pro comes as a namespace. So now we'll be able to generate text that uses Text Mesh Pro to make it all clear. Now, all of our code is going to go inside of this class. So basically just keep it between these curlies, and you always want to keep these vertically aligned. Visual Studio does a nice job with the dashed lines so you know what's inside of what and nested. But basically all of this is where the code's going to be. You don't have to use either one of these things. The start happens once, right at the very beginning, and only once when you launch your program. And an update means every frame. So if you're running 60 frames per second, whatever code you have in here is going to run 60 times per second. And above this stuff is where we like to declare variables. So variables are basically containers that you can store information in. So I'm going to have make it public, which means it'll show up in Unity in the inspector tab so I can fiddle with the values later. And then you give it a type. So let's start with just three simple variables to a public int and say fave number. And I'm going to make it equal to 25 semicolon. That ends the statement. So it's an integer whole number, favorite number. Let's do public string. String just means text. And I'm going to call this my text. I'm going to say hello world, the classic first code line. And then finally, let's do one called a bool, which is a boolean. Basically, it's a light switch. It's either on or it's off. Um, switch equals true. So it's either true or false. Now, what can we do with that? Well, we could, in the start, back in Unity here, there's it's called the console. It's the debugging area where the program will tell you helpful things that you screwed up, right? So if I want some text to show up here just to test it out, which is what we're going to do, we can use a cool little feature called debug.log. And then inside of it, I'm going to say my favorite number is, put a space in, and then the plus symbol. And then I can just name the variable. Fave number. You saw it popped up. I hit the tab key to autocomplete. Great. Let's do another debug log. Yeah, let's say I like to say, when you do these plus signs, it's called concatenating, which means just joining strings together. And this will be my text, semicolon, and debug.log. Let's do the switch is, and then I'll say my switch. So it's in the start, so it'll run once, and it'll hopefully, when you come back in here, it always likes to check the C# script, make sure there's no errors in it. If there are, they would show up here. There's a new Visual Studio Editor package, which I don't care about right now. So I'm just going to hit play, and the script is running attached to the score text. That's the only reason this is going to run at all. And there it is. My favorite number, I like to say the switch is true. Okay, so we can read those variables. We could add numbers together, do all kinds of fun things with the code, which is exactly what we're going to be doing with the score text. We're going to be taking the existing score and adding numbers to it each time a can hits our little can catcher object that's going to be living down there. So let's go to our cheat sheet here. Our scorekeeper cans, we first need to tell it that we're going to be using that score text. Let me go back here. This score text, this is what's going to be showing to the user, right? So if I just type in like, hello, when we first start, it's going to say hello, but then when we knock a can down, it'll say score. So I probably should actually type score in here, but I'm going to leave it hello so you can see it change. Yeah, I'm going to clear that. So if we go back to our script, I don't really need these right now. You could do double slashes at the beginning of each one and it just comments it out, which means it's like a note to yourself as the programmer, like this comment that it came with. Another fun thing you can do is highlight all of them. Yeah, it's red underlined because these don't exist anymore. I just commented them out. There's a cool shortcut. If you hold Control and then tap K and then tap U. Oh, sorry, wrong one. KC is to comment, then tap K, then U to uncomment. So K, then C, that will comment that. And I could just delete all that. I'm going to leave it in there for now. So we need some new variables. We need to know, the program needs to know what the text is. So I'm going to make a new variable. This is going to be a text mesh pro u GUI. It's the text. Okay. And we're just going to call it score text. And you'll notice I'm using this lowercase then capitals with no spaces, no underscores. That's called camel case. So any other words that would come after that would be capitalized. The first one is lowercase. It's a naming convention that programmers use. And all we're doing here is saying, there is a variable of this type. There's an int, but this one is text TMP, text mesh pro stuff. And then it's called that. Okay. We also need to tell it we're going to have a score. So our score is going to be whole numbers. So we want it to be of type int. And again, we'll just say score value. And that's going to get us started. And we could put a piece of code in the start that says, hey, this score text is this thing right here. But since I made it a public variable, you can actually drag and drop it right here in um, Unity. So you can see the variables show up here under my script that are attached here. It says there is no score text object, but it's looking for this. Well, that's what this is. So we're going to drop it in there. And the score value starts at 0 because I didn't initialize it. So it just defaults to 0. So I couldn't, explicitly say it equals 0. So it actually has value. It's probably the best way to do that. And then we actually don't need this. We don't really need the start either, technically. But we can make our own functions. And the built-in ones, this one runs at the beginning, update is every frame. We can make a new function. A function to me is basically a named set of instructions. So like make pancakes. So I can make a public void make pancakes, parentheses, because I'm not providing any values. And then I could have a whole bunch of steps in here. Well, that was weird autofill, but that's basically what a recipe is, right? So you just name it, and then somewhere else in the script, I could say run this function, and it'll run all the steps that are inside these curly braces. So we're going to make a custom function or method, they're sometimes called update score. And that's going to run when the can hits the can catcher, right? So things are going to happen. And what needs to happen? Well, if we think about it, I like to do a little bit of what's called pseudo code, like pseudoscience, which is where you kind of say it in plain English. So when should the score change? Well, when one of these cans hits the can catcher that's not there yet, that's when it should update the score itself, which is an integer, and then update this text, right? So the score will change, and then the text will show the new score. So each time we run this little function called update score, and I'm using my cheat sheet for sure, we just want remember we assigned it the score text. I want the score text, and there it sees my variable, dot, and when you do a dot after that, it's talking about this. I could do dot font size, dot vertex color, and change any of those things in there. And the text is just one of those parts of the component. So you can see if I start typing font, I could change the font size. Say the font size equals 22 or something, right? I don't want to change the font size. I want to change which part of the score text. I want to change just the text itself, right? So I'm going to say equals. And remember our debug log we did earlier? We're going to do a very similar thing here using concatenation, which is just a fun word to say. And it's just going to say score with a space. And then we need to add to that the score value. Now, if you leave it like this, you may get an error and say, I don't know how to put an integer with a string, right? Strings are just text. So we may need to, and I'll just do this out of habit, say, well, I want that value, but I want it converted into a string. So we can actually just dynamically convert that value into a string. So this is going to update the score text, right? So later on, we're going to say run the update score, and it's going to run that. Okay. So we have our first script done. We have everything assigned. It's all tied together, except we haven't ran this function. We don't have a place to run the function yet. It's checking out my code, looking for mistakes I made, which is possible. Yeah, I know. New studio. Got it. Cool. So we've got our scorekeeper, and you can see there's our script that we basically just wrote after our little practice. And we did the namespace up at the top so it knows how to use Text Mesh Pro. Excellent. We have our button, and now we're going to make our little button, give it a script so that when they do click on it, it does something. Right now, you could play the game and you could click it, but nothing would happen. So this is why code is important to at least learn the basics of, so that we can do fun things like this. So if we go back to Unity, go back to my project, in my scripts folder, I'm going to make a new script, C# script. I'm going to call this spawn maters. There we go. Now remember, if I put a bunch of code in here and hit play and nothing happens, sometimes I forget to actually attach this to an object. If you don't attach it to the object, it's not going to run. It's got to be in the scene somewhere to run. So I'm going to attach this right to this button, which just seems to make sense. So if I click on the button, there's a bunch of stuff that I changed earlier, and there's my new script. You can double click it here to open it, or you can double click it here to open it. Doesn't matter. And here we have a fresh script, right? And so again, if we look back at pseudocode, it's one thing to just type out the code as you see it in the cheat sheet and be like, "Hey, I got it to work." But understanding what you're writing, I think, is even more important, because then you can continue to use those techniques, as well as you start getting the hang of the syntax, right? The order which you have to type things, where to put parentheses, what to capitalize, all that stuff. So let's pseudocode this part. If we look at this, when the player's playing the game, when they click on this, it's going to need to know what to spawn, where to spawn it, and that's pretty much it, I think. Yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna make an empty object, which is, before we used it as basically a folder to hold like our cans and stuff, but it actually does have a location in the scene. And so I'm gonna make an invisible object, and here's a little shortcut cheat I like to see. It's way off in space over there. I better rename this before I do anything. Mater spawner. How do I get it to be over here, like near this, so it spawns them right on this little table? A couple of ways. One, I could copy the XYZ of one of the tomatoes. Another cool trick is if I click the Mater spawner and I move myself, the camera, really, I'm viewing with, I want it roughly here. I can make that jump to my position with a cool little shortcut. Control Shift F. See all these values change? And if I back up a little bit, there it is. Now, we don't need a collider on here, but I'm going to put one on here and then just disable it. The reason is it gives me something to see. Okay. I'm going to disable it, so it just kind of dims out there, but it lets me visualize the zone in which we're going to be spawning. So I disabled it. It's not going to bonk into anything. And it's all kind of twisted rotation wise because I use that Control Shift F. So I'm just going to 0 tab, 0 tab, 0, get the rotation straight up and down. And I can just basically put it where I want it, right? Somewhere in here. We can play with that later if it's not working. Looks pretty good. So there's our location, the Mater spawner. Now, what are we going to be spawning? Well, we need to tell it these game objects exist. We need to use this. So again, I'm going to make it public, which makes it show up in the inspector so I can drag and drop objects. You can use code to fill in these variable values as well. But I kind of like the drag and drop method to start out with. So I'm just going to make, instead of an integer or a Boolean, I'm going to make a variable of type game object. You can just tell it, hey, there's a variable called game object. I'm going to call that Mater. And then another game object, which is my Mater spawner, that location with the little sphere collider on it. And then finally, there's a variable of type vector3. Now, if you think about it, X, Y, Z, 3 different axes, 3 different vectors. That's all a vector 3 is. It holds 3 different values. It holds the x, y, and z all in one variable. That's all that is. And I'm going to call this mater spawn lock. And actually, I should be consistent with my variable naming and do camel case. We got a semicolon. So, where should the mater spawn? Well, that location, we need to tell it where this is. I don't want to have to type in a value because if I move that little spawner and I want to put it somewhere else, I want the script to automatically figure out, oh, he moved it. So now it's at a new XYZ. So I want to tell it, all right, the mater spawn, and there you can see it popped up with autocomplete. I'm just going to go to the mater spawn location and hit tab and say it is equal to. Whenever you assign a variable, it takes whatever's on the right and plugs it into the variable container on the left. So I want it to be the same location as my mater spawner dot. Now remember, when you use a dot like this, I'm telling it, look at this object, dot, and I can say dot sphere collider, dot transform. But I'm going to say dot transform and then dig one level deeper. So dot transform, dot position, dot rotation, dot scale. Any of those things we can set, change anytime we want with code. So that dot is kind of like digging down to different layers of the component. So mater spawner dot transform dot, and you can see the things that show up. I could do scale, lossy scale. I don't know, that's not right. I want the position. So where should you spawn? Well, wherever the mater spawner's position is. And that happens once at the very beginning. So it looks and finds that spawn location and it knows that XYZ. So I can move that mater spawner anytime I want and it'll automatically figure it out each time I play the game. So now remember, we need to have a custom function to say, when I run this recipe of sorts, do all the following steps. This is going to give us something to run. So we're going to do public void, which simply means it's not spitting anything back out to me. It's just running the steps. You could write a function that would like return a number to you, and then you use that number for other calculations or something. But we're just going to not return anything. We're just giving it a spawn mater function. You don't really need to write the word function on there. But when I first got started, I started doing that. And true programmers will probably yell at me right now. I'm even going to start out with a debug log and say, spawn a tomato. So we'll know, did that function really run or not? And to actually spawn the tomato, it's not spawn. The fancy word is instantiate, another fun word, which means spawn. And in parentheses, you have to tell it, what do you want to spawn? Where do you want to spawn it? And at what rotation? So we're going to go, I want to spawn this game object, right? So we plug in mater, comma, where do we want it to be? Well, we want it to spawn where we assign this location, right? So mater spawn lock, comma, and then the rotation, you can use its parent. So that spawn mater game object, that empty object, it has a 0, 0, 0 rotation. That's just how I want the tomatoes to be too. So I can fill this in with quaternion.identity, which basically means whatever its rotation is, go ahead and use that. Okay, so fancy way of saying that. So that's it for the scripts, these two scripts anyways, scorekeeper cans and the spawn maters. Let's go back to our cheat sheet here and review where we're at and where we're going. Hopefully I'm not going too fast if you're new to programming. Also, by the way, this whole thing is possible to push to all these different social media channels because of Social Media Week Lima. They're my awesome sponsors so that I can actually make this show. I don't get paid for it or anything. It's just they paid for the software that I could use. But sociallima.com, if you're going to go to a social media conference, anything marketing on this half of the United States, that's the one to go to. And I'll be speaking there this summer about VR and VR development in high school classrooms and using it for job training, all that fun stuff. So let's highlight the stuff we have done. Ta-da! I think I used this green. Yeah, I did. Okay. And we have that part done too. But okay. So let's see where we're at. We need to test out some things. In the live version here, right now we have functions that could spawn a tomato. But when should it spawn the tomato? Well, when we pseudocode, again, we think, well, when the user clicks this button, run that function that spawns a tomato. So if we click on the button that we made, in the button component, oh, here's my script, by the way. I need to assign it stuff. Let's do that real quick. Prefabs. I need to tell it, this is what you're spawning. And remember the mater spawner we did, this kind of invisible thing right here? That is the mater spawner, so I need to attach it there. This is why we didn't have to use code to grab those things, but we could have. I like dragging and dropping initially. So it knows that, but when should it spawn? Well, if you open the button one up, let me collapse that. See this little on click down here? It's exactly what it says it is. When the user clicks it, do this. So I'm going to hit plus. And what it's looking for is, where is the object that has what I should be doing? Well, it's on the mater spawner itself. No, I'm sorry. It's on the button itself. Sorry. So on here, there is a function. Here's the name of the script, right? And remember the name of the function we made? Spawn mater function. We made it public so that it would show up right here. That's the whole reason we did that. And other scripts could access it too. So all we said was, on this button, there's a script that has a function to run when it gets clicked. Whew. Let's test it out and hope it works. You never know. Bzz. All right. I feel taller. I can throw a tomato. Oh, that was a bad throw. Oh no, it's not clickable, which means I did something wrong. Yep. Let's see what we did wrong here. My button is not clickable. Well, let's see. What do we do here? We've got the button. It is interactable. I'm going to go look at my practice one and go to that button. Let's see if there's something we're doing wrong here. On click, color tint, target, that's that. It's a raycast target, which it needs to be. So that raycast, the laser that comes out, that's what we're looking at. The button is interactable, of course, and then it runs that function in the practice. Let's look at mine. Oops, not that. Material doesn't need one. The button is interactable. Button, spawn maters. I am missing something. Let's see here. Let's go back to the practice one. This is what you get with a live show, folks. Not always the best. Oh, I see comments. Arg. Yeah. Interpolation. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Myinator instead of concatenation. I just have always used concatenation, so that's why I'm still using it. Let's see. This is the practice. Nothing there. It's in the layer UI. Image. It is a raycast target. I don't need a material on it. Interactable. I am not sure why that's not working. Let me try it again. See what happens. No, it's not working. And that's not updating score because we haven't done the can catcher yet, but spawn tomato, you do not look very interactable. It's not doing the mouse or, the hover over thing either. So, let me take one more look at it. Take it from the top, right? Always check the cheat sheet. Text Mesh Pro score button. New empty position, new script, button must be below other canvas UI. Oh, that's probably it. That's probably why I put that in the cheat sheet. Button must be below. It is below it. What if we put it on top? That help? It is below the other stuff. There is an order thing. I wonder if we need to do that. That's not it. Put it back here. And feed spawn location. That's the script. Transform with input, canvas renderer. Source image type, pixels per moment, reactable, button image, navigation. Back to the practice one. Here's the button. There's the text in it, but that's not the clickable part. Source image UI sprite. Yeah, that's not it. None. Button. Let's see. I'm just going to move on here. I'll come back to this. See if we can figure this out later. But let's get the can catcher part working at least. The can catcher. So this is going to be basically a cube that will detect when cans hit it. So the VR Basic Bytes Live. Let's go there. We're going to make a new 3D object cube. There, it's like way over there. Come hither. I'm going to call this can catcher. Get it above the water. Over here. Down below here. Awesome. So we'll do like 10.07, 10. So basically it's a big enough area that the cans will hit it. Ish. Make it bigger if you want, if you're worried about cans going way out there and not getting hit. But this is just gonna catch the cans and detect when the score should be updated. So we're gonna make a new script, create C#. We'll call this can catcher, and we're going to attach it to something so it actually runs. Maybe once it compiles, it's always got to run that little compiler thing. Drop it on the can catcher. So there's our script right there. Also, you'll notice the box collider, there's a setting for is trigger. If I leave it the way it is, not triggered, when these cans hit it, they'll like bounce off of it. But making something a trigger is like when you walk into Walmart and you didn't hit a button to open the door, you just walked into like a zone and it detected that and opened the doors. That's what this does. It makes it, instead of a physical thing that you bump into, it makes it a zone that can trigger things to happen inside of usually a script, which is exactly what we're going to do now. So our can catcher. We need to tell it, the can catcher is going to be updating the score and the text. So I need to make a variable for that game object score text. That's it, yeah. And then on the, we don't need any of these actually. We're going to do a cool little function that says, when you enter this triggered zones, do blank. So if we just start typing on trigger enter, as soon as I hit enter, it's going to do a bunch of things. It made it private, so nothing else is going to access it. And it's looking for a collider. And I'm going to, because if a tomato hits it, you should not get points. So inside of it, yes, the tomato will enter the trigger zone, but we need to say, well, only the cans, please. So we're going to say if other means the thing that hit it, right? And it's getting that here. If the other thing, the other game object, compare tag, which means look at its tag, which I'll get to in a little bit, can, and then open curly, hit enter, do the following. Well, we want to destroy the can, so I'm going to destroy other dot object tab key. We also, these are going to be kind of long lines of script here if you're looking at the cheat sheet. But basically, the score text game object, remember that's a game object. Inside that game object, we have a script, right? And a script is a component, the transform is a component. That's all that those are. So I'm going to say, okay, in that game object, I want you to get the component. Which component do I want? I want the scorekeeper cans. There it is, that script. So inside that script, we need parentheses to tell it we're not giving it anything. We're just saying inside that script. So dot, what is inside that script that we want to change? We made an integer called, score value. And what do we want to do with it? We want to add 5 points to it, let's say. The shorthand way to do that is plus equals 5, which means whatever the score value is, add 5 to it. So again, inside that game object, get the component this, which is a script. And in that script, dot, remember we're digging down into these, the score value plus equals 5. The other thing we need to do is almost identical to this, which is to change the text, right? So instead of changing the score value on the scorekeeper can, we're going to say run the function called update score. Just to show you where these are coming from, the score value and the update score. Remember back in the script, we have the score value and the score text, right? And the score text has properties. The score value has is an integer. And so that's why this can catcher, is updating the score value itself. And then it's going to run this function to actually update the score. Now, the tag portion, imagine these as little sticky notes that you put on objects. So it's like writing the word can on a sticky note, and then you go stick it to each can. So it has something it can look at when getting these cans. And the cans currently have no tag on them. They're all just called can, 0 through 5. But right here, so if I go to tag, there's some predefined ones, but I want to make my own. Hit the plus, call it can, save, back to the can. And I'm going to highlight, shift click this, and tag all these at the same time. So now each one of these is all tagged as can. And that's important because when that hits this trigger here, it's going to say, well, what's the tag, right? If the other thing is tagged as can, then destroy the can, add 5, change the text to reflect it. So let's see if it works. All right, so get the tomato. Oh, I missed. Ta-da! And it didn't work. Oh, I think I know why. I don't think I assigned in the can catcher. Yep, the score text. I never told it where that was, which is right there. Sorry, if you don't tie those together, it doesn't know what to update. The score, the actual integer value updated, but it didn't update what it looks like until we tie that together. Hey, there we go. We got 15 points. And you can see that Well, you can see that it gave me, I hit 3 off, so it gave me 15 points. Now, this is why I would initialize the, instead of saying hello there for the score text, you'd probably come in here and say score like 0. So when you run the game, it doesn't look weird. Um, I'm still kind of frustrated with this button thing over here. I know I can get this thing to work. Um, world space, or well, that's the whole thing. Canvas, you want to go spending. Let's do the confetti thing, because I know how to do that. This part's kind of neat. In the practice here, if I go up to the ship, there's the cannon right, which is that one. And inside of that, I made a particle system, which is basically a game object that spits out stuff, right? Like little stars and stuff. So all we need to do is make an empty object and give it the component called particle system. And then we're going to mess with some values. So it's spitting out, straight, that kind of way. Um, and let's do that. So here's the ship. Cannon right. Yep, that's the right one right there. So inside of that, I'm going to create an effect particle system. And then you can see it starts already showing you what it's going to spit out, which is completely wrong. It's like a trail of stars or something. I don't know. And I want to customize this quite a bit. So I'm going to cheat just a little bit. I'm going to put my practice one on my other screen so I can do this a little bit quicker for you. I don't want them to be lasting quite so long. I don't want it to loop. I want to tell it when to shoot. The lifetime, start lifetime, and speed, so it's not flying out of there like crazy. For now, I'm going to leave looping on just because you can see what it's doing a little easier. You can see them expiring a little sooner. And then this, the start color, currently it is a single color. I'm going to set it to gradient. And now when I click on it, I have all these little tab stops. So I can double click on one and make this like a bright yellow. And I don't want it to fade from color to color. I want them to be fixed. So there's a chunk of them there. If I click here, I can do a different one. If I click here, I can do a double click and do another one. Just kind of oops. There we go. Got one here. Take that one. That's an ugly color, whatever that is. I don't know. I'm colorblind. This is always tricky. And sure, black confetti. Well, maybe we will do kind of a orangey looking one. That works. It's not perfect. Whatever. Okay. So now it's spitting out all kinds of different colors. Let's save that. The gravity modifier, we want these things to act like they're falling towards the earth. So I found out that a 0.07, you can see these are kind of slowly falling to the ground. The speed, I'm going to speed it up there. So it's like when it shoots out. Yeah. And then emission. Let me collapse that part. So the emission part, rate over time. I want a whole bunch of these things. So let's do like, look at that. Whole bunch of them spitting out. And then the shape is very important. Let me collapse emission. The shape I want to be a cone. So it's shooting out in that kind of shape. I'm going to tighten up the angle a little bit to somewhere in the 18s. Radius is going to be quite small. 0001, 0.0001. That I left alone. And then, okay. And then finally, the last part is the renderer. Currently, there are these little circle looking things. I don't want them to be that. I want them to be, if I click on this target here, here's a particle unlit. So now they're little squares, kind of. And these are definitely going to be smaller. 0.003. Now we're starting to look like a particle shooter. And if I turn looping off, which I'm going to do here shortly, I just want to make sure I have everything right here. Billboard view. I think we're good there. Okay, so that's actually our result. Let me save that real quick. And then the rotation, I want that to spin around. And then you basically just take that confetti shooter, kind of put it. Oh, it's not bad. Not bad at all. Ta-da! Unselect it. You can see, oh, there's a lot going on there. The colors look completely wrong. Maybe I picked the wrong one here. Oh, it's water. That's why. I want what is that called? Unlit, I think. Render spray unlit default. Unlit. Could make our own little shape. Well, there's a lot of default things in here. Look at all those. That's because of the ship. That's why. There we go. I'm looking for one of these that'll take on the colors like a white little square like that. That's better. Now it's more colorful. Okay. And we're going to turn looping off before I forget that. Not that. Let's see. That was under the very top. Confetti looping there. So if I play it, it just shoots once. There we go. So we've got a particle system. When do we want it to play? Well, we want the particle system to play. If I go look at this, I've got all this stuff in there, blah, blah, blah. Play it. In the can catcher script, we're going to make a new variable, and then we're going to do a shoot cannon that'll run it. So let's go to our can catcher script, which is here. And I have a new variable of type particle system. Call this confetti. And it's kind of like a little movie, right? So we can just tell it when to play. We could just tell it right here, confetti dot play with empty paren. And then each time a can hits the catcher, it will run. That's one way to do it. Another is to make a custom function outside of this on trigger enter. So it ends here. I would go down here and do like public void shoot cannon with our empty parens, empty curlies, and paste it in there. And now how do you run that function? Well, right here, you could just say shoot cannon parens. There we go. When you just put the name of a function, it means go run that function. The reason you might do this is if you have a whole bunch of steps that are inside of this, you don't have to gum up the works here inside of this and make this if statement huge and kind of hard to read. Sometimes it's nice to be able to just reference a different function and tell it, hey, go run that, play the confetti. Now I only have one step, but I'm going to leave it the way it is. So let's see if our confetti works. This is all pending me being able to hit the cans with the tomato. So let's run that. Oh no, it didn't run. Oh, I bet I didn't tie something together. Hold up. We didn't even attach. Oh no, I know what it is. My can catcher. It's looking for the confetti particle system. Yeah, I did it again. There's my confetti particle system. Now let's run it. Got to tie those scripts together. That's one of the disadvantages of doing public like that is sometimes you forget to do that. Pow, pow, pow. Look at that. Yay. It looks fairly realistic, for a cartoon pirate ship. That that is all the steps up to that point. Now there is of course, going back and trying to get this button to work. I'm not sure why it's not working. Um, but I'm gonna try to fix it now. So you could conclude here and quit, and if I don't figure it out now, I'll just figure it out during practice and then come back and show you at the beginning of the next episode, or maybe you can get it working on your own. But I want to try to get it working at the risk of running over an hour. I already realize um, I'm still going to try and get it to work. So here's my practice. Let's see what we did different. We're done with that. Let's collapse that. Canvas. The button's on the bottom, right there. We have the rect transform. We're just going to compare each little section here and see what happens. Done with this. Done with tomatoes. Button. Untagged. Got the rect transform. That doesn't matter. The canvas. That's the same. The renderer. No problem there. Image. UI sprite none. With a color. All checked. Slice 1. So there's identical. And then button is interactable. It's got a tint. Button image. Spawn made a button. Button image. Oh, that is that. Yeah, that is that. Those are all the same. And then here the Mater spawner. Oh, I think this is it. In the practice one, I put the Mater spawner script on here, spawn maters. Let's go do that. I think that's the difference. That's what I messed up. Mater spawner. Yeah. The script needs to be on here. Then I can tell it my prefabs and all that. Prefab. Tomato. Mater spawner. And I need to take it off of something. Actually, this is kind of interesting. If you can't find where your script actually lives in the scene, you can actually go to the script and right click it and say show reveal. I want it to reveal in scene. Where's that one at? Find references in scene. There it is. And there I can see it's on both the button and the spawner. So on the button, I'm going to maybe, it's probably on the text. Let me clear out the little search there and just go to the button. It's not on there, so it's probably sitting. No, it's not on there. Just called spawn meter button. All right, now this is on there. And now my actual button, I need to tell it on click, the Mater spawner is going to run the spawn Mater. Is that really what it's called? Spawn Mater. Yep, that's it. Is what it's called. All right. Oops. Live. Save. Test. Nope, one not. Spawn tomatoes. Do it. Do it now. Oh, let's see here. Why did it say that spawn maters references in scene? Button. Canvas. There. Let's take that out for a second. Oh, there it is. Remove. Okay. Now clear that out. Go to the script is on there with a function. Spawn maters. Spawn mater function. Save it. I don't think that'll make a difference, but I've been wrong many times. Still not working. Okay. It's got to be something to do with our canvas then. That's my guess. World space. Let's compare these two. Practice. Canvas. World space. Main camera default 0 max. World space. Main camera default 0 max. Scalar. Track device. Oh, that's what I'm missing. It doesn't have the track device gravity. Okay. We need that. I wonder if I can copy it between projects. I don't think you can, but let's try it anyways. Paste component as new would light up, but it didn't. So track device graphic rate, because track device graphic, you don't have to do anything really with it. Ignore reversed graphics. I don't think it really matters, but that's probably going to be the difference, folks. Whew. If this doesn't work, I don't know what I'll do. Aha! Now, unfortunately, now it is spawning tomatoes. However, they are not falling down, which means my prefab probably has an issue. Yeah, it doesn't. Let's open the prefab. It does not have a rigid body. Rigid body is what gives it the ability to use gravity. Bing, bing. Kind of important. Collision detection, continuous dynamics, so it doesn't, glitch through floors and such. And I hit this little back arrow, and now let's see. Let's look at that tomato. It's got a rigid body. And now when I play it, yay! Oh, you know what else I forgot? In the prefab? Colliders! So we are spawning a whole bunch of tomatoes, but it's not colliding with anything. Why? Because it needs a collider. Now, these have colliders on them, but the original prefab does not. So I built these, and I made the prefab before I put on these other things. So just got to go open the prefab again. And we're going to make these act like they're spheres. So I'm just going to do a sphere collider, and you can see it's nice and tight around there. That's pretty good. We don't want it to be a trigger. If you want them to be really bouncy, remember we have these kind of tomato physics things. All we did on that was we created a physics material. There it is, physics material. So you can make a new one, test, and tell it, how slidey it is, how bouncy it is, all that kind of stuff. I don't need that one, but in the tomato physics, I made it a little bouncy. So now the prefabs, as they spawn, will be somewhat bouncy. And if I wanted to get fancy, I wouldn't have them spawn in the exact same location. I would actually use a little function to make it spawn somewhere either here, 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 or here kind of thing. But it works now, so that's great. And they don't have the grab interactable. Oh my goodness. Boy, I messed the prefab up really bad. I got to fix it. It's going to bother me. If I look at my actual tomatoes that I built, sphere collider, got it. Why is there two sphere colliders on here? Oh, because I added one and built one. So let's remove that. Same thing here. We don't need two sphere colliders. But we do want it to be a grab interactable. So I'm just going to copy this. It won't let me copy that. That's okay. We'll just go edit in our prefab. Let's go to our prefabs. Tomato, open prefab, grab interactable. What we need here. Grab interactable. Everything is instantaneous. I don't think we need anything else on there. We want this to be instantaneous though. All right, save that, go back, save, play. Okay, now we've got a prefab to end all prefabs. So, me. So let's grab one of the ones. There we go. We can actually grab them now. That was weak. I need to add a little more oomph for when I throw them. See, it didn't even fall off. There's actually a setting for that too. I know we're going over time, but if you look at these the grab interactable. Let me pull this out. Um, the throw velocity scale, you can actually kind of give it a little boost when it leaves your hand. So that quarter and 1.5. If I go to my prefab one more time, that's not it. That's not where I wanted it. Those are the events. Maybe I didn't have it on here on the old one. Let's boost that up to like 4 and just see what happens. Now that's only going to be on the ones that spawn. So I should probably make these, rebuild these from the prefabs. Let's get these out. Spawn some new ones. There. See, now when I throw it, it gives me like a boost, like I'm throwing a fastball. Ta-da! Whew, we did it. We made it through. I'm sorry, that was kind of painful at times, but that's what you get with a live show. So if I ever re-record these, then they'll be a lot more concise. Probably could have done all this in about 35 minutes instead of an hour 11. So that is all for this. I hope this is helpful to somebody, and I will see you all later. Have a good Saturday.